The Kansas City Chiefs are in trouble when it comes to Chris Jones, and they are getting ready to face a very different season. Welcome back to Locked On Chiefs. I'm Ryan Tracy, the founder of Rogue Analytics, as well as your host over at RGR Football, and we have a lot to talk about today. We're going to talk about Chris Jones in this second coming segment because there's a lot to unpack there. It happened late last night, and I'm going to go through it. But today we got some announcements about what the NFL is planning to change and a couple of important things. They're still planning on the July 28th date being the day that teams report to the facility to begin work. But they have decided that the first week of preseason is now going to be canceled. The last week, game 4 of the preseason, is now going to be canceled. So you're looking at 2 games, the week of August 20th through the 24th, and the week of the 27th through the 31st. Those are the dates that you're going to have preseason football as it stands right now. And then, if everything goes according to plan, and there are games and nobody gets any mass breakouts of the infection, and they're able to continue to field a team and to field practices and keep going, the Kansas City Chiefs are in a position where they're going to be a guinea pig. It's going to be the first contest mixing in for the regular season. It is September 10th, and the Chiefs-Texans game is the first on the docket. So there will be a bit of dress rehearsal, a ramp-up for the Chiefs in particular in getting ready to play the first game of the season. It's very interesting, and I'm not sure that this is going to be the end of it. A couple of comments that came from around the league by people who know, we know that the Saints have canceled their offseason to this point, and that they have done what a lot of teams have not. They've gone drastically the other way, and it's not that they're done, and I don't think the NFL is done as well. A really interesting comment from the report about week 1 and week 4 of the preseason being canceled, being removed from the games, is Chase Daniel, an old friend and quarterback, who says many more changes are coming than just this. The 2020 NFL season will not be recognizable, that's for sure. That is a quote from his Twitter account. And that's really, I think, some inside information about what the teams are being told that maybe we just haven't heard about yet, because the league is still developing how they're going to communicate, how they're going to go through this process. And getting to that point is difficult. And I think it's still, much like we said earlier with Matt yesterday, that it's not done. They can't have a full plan yet. They're going to have to roll with some of these punches. And I think the punches are still going to come. And the last complication that takes that to the next level is that, yes, they have said we're not going to have these games, but the NFLPA hasn't signed off on that either. They haven't signed off on playing any games. And they had the communication to the agents the other day, and now we're hearing through some of the NFL Network folks that there's some in the union leadership that continue to think maybe they shouldn't play any preseason at all, let alone see what happens when the fall comes around and there are actual season games to play. This is going to be very, very interesting to see how it all turns out. And it looks like Thursday there's going to be a player rep call from the NFLPA to get some kind of consensus about where the players are. We should hear something from that as well, and that will give us a better idea of where we think the union as a whole may be lying. Now, when we get back, we have to get into this Chris Jones thing, and then we're going to talk with Matt Derrick again on another topic later in the show. So if you heard the first part of our conversation yesterday with Matt Derrick and I, we covered some of the Chris Jones situation. That's what it was 24 hours ago. It's not that same thing right now. And we have to get into a little bit. It all comes from Chris's reaction online to another report being reposted. It came from Mike Garofalo of the NFL Network, and his reaction to that was really just about, hey, there's another option where maybe, quote unquote, I won't play. Le'Veon Bell told me about this, unquote. And that's taking it up a level. That's a threat in and of itself to not be happy with the situation, to consider sitting out a year. Now, we heard a lot about what happened with Lev Bell. And if you remember at the time, I told you that Chris Jones hanging out with him is not really the best scenario influence for what the Chiefs and Chris Jones and his people are trying to get done in reaching a long-term contract. And I do feel that both sides of this conversation still do want to reach a long-term contract. I don't think that's changed. I think it really does come down to the value of what Chris Jones sees for his future versus what the Chiefs see for them willing to pay for his future. And I don't think those numbers are terribly close. I don't think it's a slight against Chris, and I don't think that it's anything that can't be overcome either. I do want to say that. If this does spark conversation, I think that's a good thing all the way around, because you can figure out exactly where you lie with the difference in the valuation of what you think he should be paid going forward. I will say this, though, that I don't think it's a good idea for Chris Jones to try and threaten something if he's not willing to carry it out. And if he is willing to carry it out, I question his decision-making, because the difference for Le'Veon Bell is he'd earned quite a lot more money before he got to the point where he took a year off in refusing to sign the franchise tag tender. That it makes for a whole lot of different lifestyle, different process, and quite frankly, a year at your peak, the height of your career, trying to let that go, I think is a mistake for any player. But especially if there's no extending circumstances like an extended injury rehab or something like that, I could see maybe in that kind of situation. But in this, I just can't. So I do feel that it's still in the best interest for them to move forward and try to reach an agreement. I just don't know if this makes it more or less likely. My gut reaction is that it makes it less likely. I don't think it was probably received very well if the team is even paying attention to social media. There's a lot of teams that just consider it all bluster and they're not really going to pay attention. There are teams who do. I don't know exactly where the Chiefs lie with how much they're going to put into a statement on social media. These days, more and more players communicate that way. So I think they're gonna hunker down. They're gonna stick with Chris Jones's representatives, and they're gonna work the traditional way of front office to player agent. And I don't think they're gonna get too distracted by that. But it comes down to a situation that I talked about over on the RGR channel. I think it was last week. It might have been 2 weeks ago. And that if this has significantly changed, if this statement or getting to this point without a contract, because that's really what it's about. If you've gotten to this point and feelings have changed, a relationship has changed, and this or any other statement or what they're talking about, team to representatives, changes, and the team now feels, if they get to the point where they feel, hey, we're just not going to get this done. We're not going to arrive at a number that makes him happy, that he'll agree to, and that we're still comfortable paying for, knowing that we have to get the Mahomes deal done. And yes, at the end of the day, the quarterback takes precedence, period, especially somebody with the talent of Patrick Mahomes. You're not going to handcuff yourself when you're trying to deal with his upcoming contract. But there are others. There's Frank Clark. There's Travis Kelce. There's Tyrann Mathieu eventually. I think Tyron's under contract in 2020 and 2021. So you could see an extension being needed there as well. But if you're just to the point where you're sure you can't get anything done, and this changed it or whatever changed it, and you just don't feel that the future has anything for you other than the possibility of a second franchise tag or him completely sitting out for a season, that puts you in a very bad situation. And I think that does take you to the point where seeking a trade now becomes more about trying to get something done rather than sticking to what I think pre-draft was we had to have X number of compensation. It had to be a first-round pick, etc. A very similar situation to what the Jets are in with Jamal Adams. And that's something I talked about last week. I'm not going to go into too much depth about it. You can find it over on the RGR YouTube channel. But if both teams like that are in a situation where they don't feel they have a long-term future because they can't get deals done with their players, it is more of a likelihood that they could try to work out a deal where they trade disgruntled player position for position if the other one is willing to pay. That's what it is, because both players are going to need a new contract eventually. I think you have an extra year with Jamal Adams. I think he said that he's willing to wait it out if he goes to a contender, etc. Just a report today that he was trying to get to Dallas and had a conversation with the fan where he said, hey, I'm working on it. So there's definitely some specific places he'd like to go. Chiefs are one of them, but I think Dallas is definitely at the top of the list. But that going forward, if we take a step back, we have to talk about what's the absence of Chris Jones make the Chiefs look like. Right now, and I've gone through this the whole season, is I expected him to come in at the last minute, sign his tag, play, report to camp at the last minute, do everything at the bare minimum to make sure that he is within his rights, but also accruing a season, getting that tag, and being eligible for the increased tag should the Chiefs have to do it a second time. I'm not so sure that happens now. Again, I don't know if it's something that's the best move for him, but I think saying something like that on social media and calling into Lev Bell, that's either a lot of posturing or it's something you're really willing to do. And if you do that, it leaves you in a bad position, and you can deal with the ramifications of what the CBA will allow the team to do if a season is accrued, which we don't know about because of what we talked about in the opening. But it also sets you up to be, what does your defensive line look like in 2020 if you are able to play? We don't know if that's going to happen, but if they do, the Chiefs are light on interior pass rushers right now. Colin Saunders looks to get a lot more reps if Chris Jones is not in camp and not willing to play. Yes, Derek Nottie and Mike Pennell are going to give you a little bit as well, but we know that they are based there to attack the run and that the pass rush is not the expectation from them. And quite frankly, any of the reserves, I don't know that you feel that you have a 3 technique that you can pass rush with in that group. Again, pass rush well out of the base or the bigger sets. Yes, they have plenty of guys that they have rotated from defensive end into 3 tech in specific pass rushing situations. And I think they do feel comfortable with a group of those. We just saw Breland Speaks looks like he's in much better shape this season than he was last. Let's hope that that's true and that it pays off as well. But I think all that may harken back to maybe that's part of what the Chiefs were doing in 2019 in rotating so many guys that they had listed at end into the tackle position to find out who might be able to fill in as a pass rusher on the inside. And what we've come to find is that they have a number of them. So I don't know what the base would be like. Certainly you'd be more stout against the run in the base, and you'd like to bring along Colin Saunders as a base 3 tech that can pass rush. But in designated pass rushing situations, I think they're very comfortable with Tano Passanio in there. They like Taco Charlton. They brought him in for that. They know Mike Dana is a prospect that they like to put in there. They have a lot of guys that they feel can rotate in at an interior pass rush position and pay some dividends. So I'll be interested to see how that comes out. Now, we'll have more as this develops, certainly this weekend next. But when we get back, we're going to talk with Matt Derrick a little bit further about what the future might hold.